at the end of the day, the objective that the state has is to deliver electricity. And that's the same objective that the investors, whether the existing ones or the new ones, also have. But a key driver to doing that and making it successful is ability to make that investment and ability to recover that investment via the right cost.
The state of electricity, it was not too good at first. That was when the whole thing started, but it's getting better.
The state of electricity presently, due to the banding and boundary they're doing, the price has gone high. And we don't get value for what we pay for because, the duration of the electricity they are giving us per day does not even equivalent with what they promise us.
My state is Ogun State, although I just more like interstate. I stay in Lagos and Ogun State, one kind. This because of my work. So in Lagos, we actually load on our prepaid and we enjoy it, even though it is band A. But we enjoy the value of um, the light actually. But for the Ogun State, I'm telling you, I'm really facing a lot there actually. The same amount being paid there, but we are not getting the value of what we paid for there. That's just the difference.
Well, thank God for this era of prepaid. Those who are paying the estimated bill, they will know what they are passing through now.
So I stay around Ijushaga and it's very bad. It's really, really bad. Sometimes we can't even charge your laptop, you can't charge your phone, you can't iron your clothes for work. It's really hard. And most times they bring it in the midnight. And I'm thinking, we need light to sleep in the midnight, but daytime too. Like only evening time towards night time to charge and iron and do possible things when you get home. It's just so hard. So it's really bad.
The advice I can give just to all the governments, they know the right thing to do. And they know how the people are feeling presently in Nigeria.
I think the government should consider, reducing the at least you should, if you pay for a particular something, you should be able to get the value for it. Like you pay, let's assume you pay 10K for something, then you should get the value of what you paid for.
We have prepaid, and I can tell you, like, we don't even use a lot of appliances, but they just deduct so much from it, a lot from it, and we don't get the value. If that's what you're asking, no value.
Well, for the price, it's not really sustainable. I won't lie to you, but what are we going to do? You need the light. Eh? Yeah, we use prepaid meter, but when you buy light now, the amounts they give you now, it's so disheartening and it's discouraging actually. But then we have to manage and hope for the best.
Nigeria's electricity supply, despite its profile as Africa's most populous country, remains a huge challenge despite reforms. The country has an installed generation capacity of around 13,000 megawatts, but actual output is often below 4,000 megawatts, leaving millions without access to reliable power. The distribution network is plagued by inefficiency, theft, and inadequate infrastructure. Key challenges include insufficient generation capacity, inadequate transmission and distribution infrastructure, high technical and non-technical losses, and limited access to electricity, especially in rural areas. The government has introduced reforms, including the Electricity Act 2023, aiming at attract investment and improve the sector. However, the road to a reliable electricity supply is daunting. And so, what is the way forward? Hello and thank you for joining us on WebTV Focus program. I am Gabriel Jude from Lagos, Nigeria, and today we shall be discussing the state of Nigeria's electricity supply industry. And my guest who will be speaking virtually is Mr. Babatunde Osadare. He is an energy expert, oil, gas, and power. Thank you for coming on the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, team, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Let's start with the issue of electricity assessment, which is you know that Nigeria is in a perilous time, and then we have a lot of issues going on. So how would you assess the reliability and sustainability of electricity in Nigeria from where we are to this time?
I think if you ask 10 people, most people would say that the situation of electricity hasn't been very good. And so it's a very sensitive question at this time. And despite the fact that we've been, this is like 12, 13 years post privatization, we still have these challenges of electricity supply that are not, I mean, very stable, like most people would say. And it's not because efforts have not been made, it's not because investments have not been made and are still being made. But there are fundamental issues that we still need to address for us to actually have a stable and reliable electricity system. It's the responsibility of everyone, from what I would say, not just government alone, because maybe when we get to talk more later on in the program, you understand some of the key building blocks that can ensure that we have stable electricity supply that are still not there, despite all of the efforts that the stakeholders have been putting into the system. So I would say that we're not there yet in terms of reliability. In terms of quality, there's still a lot of work to do. But to take the work or the effort of everyone, including the consumers, ultimately, for us to be where we should be in this market.
I would like to draw your attention to something very disturbing, which is the issue of unstable power supply. So every year, it looks like we have some kind of recurrent decimal without fail. Let me just put it that way. Electricity, system from the transmission end, where we have, I think around February, March, that we will have, power grid collapse, like literally every year.
I think it's more complex than what a lot of people see. Because as we know, there is a value chain to electricity generation, this transmission, distribution, and of course, there are key critical inputs, particularly for thermal generation companies who generate power using gas. Now, when we talk about system, I mean, collapse, and these days we tend to use a lot of adjectives to qualify it, whether it is disturbance, whatever it is. It can happen because of many issues. A lot of them legacy issues because of investments deficit that we've had across the value chain over the years. I mean, most of the infrastructure we have, can be a lot better, but it will take a lot of investments to make them right. As we know, electricity investment is very capital intensive, and it takes a lot of time. And of course, investors must also be patient to recover the investments they've put into the system. Now, if you look at it on the technical side, why do you have these grid disturbances? It may simply be because a major power plant, one of their units are suddenly tripped off, which would affect the grid. It may be because of trippings on the transmission lines themselves, whether the 330 kV lines or 132 kV lines, that can actually a lot of load off the system that would ultimately collapse or disturbance. Or even in the distribution end, where you may have a major load center, and then that may also affect the system. So that's that on the technical side. It may be as a result of multiple factors. But what is key is that we should not lose sight of the fact that electricity is not rocket science. We know what it takes to generate power, to transmit, to distribute. But ultimately, as we consider the technical aspect, it's also very important that the commercial aspect is taken care of. Once we have the ecosystem for investment to be made and ability of investors to recover their investment with a little return on investment, I think that would be on the right path. Again, the system today, according to the Electricity Act, has also enabled private players to also come into the system by way of investment, whether it's in the transmission space or distribution space. The law allows it so that Enugu, Imo, Abia, Ekiti, Oyo, Lagos, quite a number of them have already established their law and also their regulatory institution. So, in terms of setting up based on what the law now permits, a lot of states have taken the initiatives, and we understand that some other states are still working on theirs. Now, after taking the initiative by setting up laws and then some regulatory institution, we know that it still takes a lot for them to be able to actually exercise the powers now conferred by the Constitution to play in the generation space, transmission, and of course, the regulation or having oversight over distribution activities within their state. It takes a lot. A lot of states are yearning for better power supply within their states. But we know that it will take it costs a lot of money to set up the critical infrastructure and power plants, which most of the states today are not able to afford. But we also know that the best approach is for a state to put together the right environment to attract investors, to be able to come into a state and make that power investment, whether it's by way of setting up a power plant to supply power to critical facilities, working together with the stakeholders who are already there. For example, there's no need reinventing the wheel or spending money inefficiently, where you have existing IPPs or distribution companies who already have infrastructure across most of the state's network. So it will be a lot easier, which is what we are happy and happy to advise for a lot of collaboration to happen, because at the end of the day, the objective that the state has is to deliver electricity. And that's the same objective that the investors, whether the existing ones or the new ones, also have. But a key driver to doing that and making it successful is ability to make that investment and ability to recover that investment via the right cost. As you know, even at the national level, a major constraint to the power situation we have, or having good electricity infrastructure and services today, has to do with cost recovery. We know where tariffs are not reflective of the actual costs of that investment, either in generation or transmission, and so on. So once a state is able to look into the fundamentals, and is open to collaborating with others, new investors and those, I strongly believe that it is possible and feasible for a state to very, very quickly, within the time that such investment would permit, to make very good strides in the electricity space.
President Ahmed Tinubu, recently approved 3.3 trillion naira for a stable power supply, according to him. And so, what do you make of this? Would this address the issue of Genco that we've been having, that long-time issues?
I think with the 3 trillion naira, which has been a topical issue over the last few days, and rightfully so, because we know how illiquid the sector has become. And so when you hear that type of money being approved and coming into the sector, Some people say it's still not a lot of money considering what the sector requires. If you convert it to dollar terms, maybe about $2.5 billion today. But we think that it's a very bold move on the side of the government to at this time take this bold initiative to try and address this legacy debt problem that we've been carrying in the sector over the last decade. We are hopeful, we are expectant that the government will see this program through and ensure that this legacy debt is closed out once and for all. And beyond closing out the legacy debts is to then ensure that we do not continue to rack up fresh debts. But if you look at the numbers, how did we arrive at this 3.3 trillion naira? When the government announced it, it was announced as a full and final settlement based on agreements with the generation companies. But of course, we know that these debts is for outstanding debt that was accumulated from February 2015 to March 2025. Now, the total debt based on claims made by the generation companies was about 4.7 trillion naira. And of course, that's a lot of money for any government. And of course, government doesn't have that kind of money to pay. But that's why we are happy that they are taking the bull by the horn at this time to ensure that the problem is solved. Now, if they are faced with a bill of 4.7 trillion, yes, the right thing to do is to begin to ask questions, which was eventually what happened, to have a sit down with the generation companies for them to reconcile and review the bills. And of course, from the generation companies, from their point of view, they're entitled based on contracts and power purchase agreements to get monies for energy generated, capacity payments, ancillary services, and stuff like that. But the government is also looking or also looked at how to try and reduce that exposure. Which was why that negotiation, very tough and difficult, had to happen. And at the end of the day, based on government's announcements, 3.3 trillion naira is what has now been said to be agreed with the Gencos as full and final settlement. The next question is, how will these monies be paid? Today, we see about 15 power generation companies are said to have signed up to the settlement agreement. And the issue of payments and how the monies would be raised. And the government has said, yes, even though I don't have the money, I'm going to go to the capital markets to raise the money and issue bonds and use other capital market instruments. Under the phase one, where the government is seeking to raise about the sum of 501 billion has already been raised a few weeks ago by the government. And out of that 501 billion, 223 billion has already been disbursed to some of the power generation companies. And we understand that another payment or processing is being done for another up to 50 billion or so. So we are hopeful that if the government, expeditiously try and close out on this payment and enter into the phase two of fundraising to close out the outstanding, it will really, really, really go a long way in providing some comfort to the entire sector. For government, it strongly believes that this would unlock liquidity and bring about trust, back in the sector. And of course, that is expected from government point of view. But if you look at it from the operator's point of view, for the gas company, for example, who they've been owed a lot of money over the years, they typically want to get paid and settle all their own debts and all the obligations they have, and that. But if you look at it from the generation company's point of view, they also have a lot of debts to pay. First, they settle their gas suppliers for the thermal power plants. They have O&M contractors who need to be paid. They need to buy spares for their plants and overall activities, which they've not been able to do for many years because of this accumulated outstanding debts. So in some ways, if the gas tap is opened, we expect that more generation would happen, and we expect that ultimately we will begin to see a lot more generation on the grid and ultimately more power supply to customers.
It's one thing to approve some amount of money on paper when we're talking about the government, and it's another thing to disburse the money. So I really hope that we will see the effects of that 3.3 trillion naira coming from the Genco and then having a stable power supply, like the president rightly said. But then let's talk about the issue of electricity subsidy. So, but before then, I want to ask you a critical question, which is, do you think the subsidy that we have, because we are now talking about, which I'm going after this, about subsidy removal, do you think the subsidy that as the government has been, subsidizing for electricity is really effective? Then before then, we'll now talk about removal.
Fundamentally, at the core, there's nothing wrong with subsidy. Governments across the world provide subsidy across different sectors, not just electricity. And when you provide subsidy, yes, you're trying to intervene in the markets, and you can provide subsidy along the value chain, whether at the top or directly to customers. You can provide subsidy at the point of generation, whether you want to provide subsidized gas or you want to even invest in critical gas infrastructure so that you can provide gas to power very cheap to power generation companies. And so that ultimately the cost of gas, which is a major pass-through to the tariff that customers pay, can be reasonable. So it's up to government to decide at which of the points in the value chain it wants to play. But fundamentally, the way we've carried on over the last decade is such that, in fact, this reason why we were discussing the issue of accumulated debt, right? Because customers of the tariff has simply not been, like we like to say, cost reflective, which simply means that the actual cost of generating the power, transmitting and distributing that power is not sufficient, or what is recovered as tariff is not sufficient to meet those costs. So the difference between the two, what we typically refer to as your revenue requirement as an operator and what you are allowed to recover, the difference between the two is what the government typically carries to say, I will step in, I will provide that cover, and I'll provide the monies. But the monies have not typically come when they should come, which is why when MBET gets invoice from the Gencos, MBET is not able to pay fully to the Gencos, and you have a gap, which is why when the discos bill their customers, collect monies from customers, they are not able to fully pay MBET, right? Because the monies is not sufficient to cover the invoice that has been issued. And what should have then happened is that the deficit on a monthly basis should be covered by the government by way of that, providing the shortfall and the subsidy amounts. But with the way the system works, it doesn't happen the way it should. And that's why we have this conversation around 3.3 trillion naira. Can we do a lot better? Hopefully, yes. But should we continue to rely on the same system, the same subsidy? Absolutely no, because we will continue to rack up debts, which would also make the sector illiquid. And we don't want to continue to do that because it's not a sustainable path going forward. Can we do better with the overall subsidy architecture, the design? Yes, it's actually even recognized under the Electricity Act, under the Power Consumer Assistance Fund, which is yet to become operational. But we understand that, yes, the government on the policy and the regulator side are working to see how we can operationalize the PCAF, targeted at helping consumers who are not able to afford electricity.
So do you think that the subsidy should be removed? And likewise, is Nigeria ready? Because there have been argument going on with the issue of subsidy removal. Do you think is the best time for us and we should remove subsidy for electricity?
It depends on whose point of view we are having this conversation. Some will say, yes, remove subsidy today. But you see, beyond the question of just taking a decision, the decisions can be very complex to make because there's the technical side, there's the commercial side, there's the social side, there's the political side. to the subsidy argument, and which is why in making this sort of decision, you have to look at it from the various stakeholders' point of view, starting from the government, the investors, the customers, and then once we're able to balance this competing interest, then we can then answer the question around timing. Now, should government today say, oh, subsidy is gone, the way we did for electricity, and the way we did for oil and petrol, right? Now, maybe you wouldn't want to compare the two sectors like that and answer either a yes or a no. But the question is, a lot of work has to be done just to make sure that the sufficient cushion is provided when that decision is made to remove subsidy. But fundamentally, the ecosystem for power generation, distribution, ability of investors to recover their cost must not only be technical, the commercial consideration must be put on ground. Cost recovery is key. And if we truly want to unlock the potential in our power sector, this conversation is very, very important because no investment will be made or no bank will finance any project if the path to cost recovery is not clear and transparent. So it's something that we as we continue the conversation, we must be very, very mindful to it that if we want to truly unlock the potential, ability to recover cost is very crucial for investment to come in. And I think that's the way, whether at the national level, at the state level, we should look at this discussion.
In 1 minute, what is the pathway for sustainable and reliable power supply? Just in 1 minute.
I would say that maybe part of what I've explained earlier, sustainability within the sector requires that we have the right environment, not just law, not just regulation, the policy, all of this intertwined must provide the right environment for investors to put in their funds. Whether for there to be new gas investment upstream, that requires a lot of trust that once those investments are made, gas can be dedicated to the power sector, gas to power. But if the gas suppliers cannot recover cost reflective for their gas investments, they will not make that investment. Now, we've been talking about a decade of gas, and a lot of projects under that program is at advanced stage. Now, how quickly do we begin to see the benefits until after those projects are commissioned? But whether you talk about the gas sector or the power subsector, one thing is key is cost recovery. Unlock investments, ensure that stakeholders have confidence that when they make investment, they can recover same. On the customer side, they pay for electricity. We work together collaboratively with all stakeholders to ensure that losses are reduced, forbearance is given for bills that cannot be recovered. So one way sustainability, for me, I think that is the way to go. It's not something the government can do alone. All of the players, including customers, investors, must work together to ensure that as we pursue investments, we make investments, we can also recover the cost as well, real time. And that's one of the major parts to drive the sector forward in a sustainable fashion. That's it for me. That's my view.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Babatunde Osadare, energy expert, oil, gas, and power, for your time. Indeed, it has been a robust conversation. And thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you very much once again. Thank you yourself and your colleagues in the studio. Thank you once again.
Right. And that will be all for this WebTV Focus program today. For more information on finance, the market, banking, the economy, investing, please visit the Prosher website, WebTV YouTube, and follow our social media platform displayed on the screen. Thank you everyone for watching. I am Gabriel Jude. Have a great day.